Imagine a Japanese island where the night brings not peace, but real horror. This is Amami-Oshima, and it is ruled by the Snakes of Habu. In 1980, these venomous creatures bit about 400 people, leaving a trail of pain and death in their wake. But why did the hub cause so much fear? Habu snakes are not just snakes. They are real monsters of the snake world. Close relatives of rattlesnakes and vipers. They belong to the family of oriental vipers, whose cousins are coral snakes and cobras. Imagine a creature whose bite can be fatal in just a few hours. Now multiply that fear by thousands of snakes hiding in the dark. For a long time, the fight against Habu bites has been a nightmare for local residents. The antidote existed, but it couldn't be stored in remote mountainous areas without electricity. And this is where most of the bites occurred. It was a race against time in which every minute could mean the difference between life and death. The Japanese authorities found themselves in a difficult position. How could they protect people from this invisible threat? Build power lines in the mountains? It will take years and cost a fortune. Develop a new antidote? The same problem, and besides, there was no guarantee that it would work at all. Then someone came up with a brilliant idea. What if Snake's natural enemy was brought to the island? An animal that can not only hunt Habu, but also survive their bites. It sounded like a rescue plan worthy of a Hollywood blockbuster. Of course, the choice fell on mongooses. These agile predators are known for their ability to resist snake venom. Nature has provided them with special acetylcholine receptors that make them less sensitive to cobra venom. And cobras are close relatives of Habu. It's the perfect combination, right? In 1979, only 30 mongooses were brought to Amami-Oshima. Small but brave fighters in the fight against snakes. It would seem that the problem has been solved. The islanders could breathe a sigh of relief, expecting that soon they would be able to walk on their land without fear of stepping on a deadly snake. But nature loves to surprise us. A few years passed, and it became clear that something had gone wrong. Mongooses have indeed multiplied, but the number of snake bites has not decreased at all. What happened? The answer was ridiculously simple, but no less shocking. Mongooses and Habu are simple. We dispersed on time. It turns out that mongooses are daytime animals, and Habu hunts at night. So they literally lived in different time zones on the same island. But if mongooses didn't hunt snakes, what did they do? Oh, they found something to do, and the consequences were even more disastrous for the local ecosystem. Mongooses began to prey on local animals, many of which were not ready for the appearance of a new predator. Among the victims was the unique Amami rabbit, a living fossil found only on 2 tiny Japanese islands. How sad. Millions of years of evolution, and in the end turned out to be dinner for an uninvited guest. It's like a dinosaur suddenly appearing in the modern world and hunting domestic cats. By 1993, the impact of mongooses had become so obvious that the Ministry of the Environment sounded the alarm. But by then, it was too late. In 2000, the mongoose population on the island reached a peak of 10,000 individuals. The small group quickly turned into an unruly horde. The environmental disaster was unfolding in front of everyone's eyes. About 15 endemic species are now under threat of extinction. Among them were not only rabbits, but also rare birds and small mammals. Imagine that a unique world, formed over thousands of years of isolation, suddenly collapsed due to a rash decision, on the verge of destruction. But the problems didn't end there. Mongooses, dissatisfied with the wildlife, began to invade farms. They hunted domestic birds, ate fruits from the fields, and worst of all, spread dangerous diseases. The farmers found themselves in a desperate situation, watching these little intruders ruin their hard work. The Japanese authorities realized that they needed to act, and quickly. In 2000, the real war against mongooses began. A special team, the Amami Mongoose Hunters, was created. It sounds like the name of a science fiction movie, doesn't it? But that was the harsh reality. The mongoose extermination operation was like a military campaign. All available methods were used, from sophisticated traps to specially trained sniffer dogs. But the mongooses turned out to be worthy opponents. They were smart, fast, and well adapted to the environment. The battle lasted almost a quarter of a century. Imagine this. An entire generation grew up on an island where mongoose hunting was a part of everyday life. The children born at the beginning of the operation have grown up and joined the fight against invasive species. The methods of fighting mongooses were constantly being improved. At first, they just set traps along the streets, but it didn't have the desired effect. Then people started using more sophisticated techniques, poisonous baits, attractants, substances that attract animals with their scent. Even specially trained search dogs were involved in the operation. Special attention was paid to the construction of traps. They were designed specifically for mongooses, taking into account their size and body shape. This way, other animals could avoid falling into the traps. And then, in 2024, the incredible news was announced. Mongooses on Amami-Oshima are completely extinct. This was the first successful battle against the mongoose population on such a large island. The triumph of human perseverance over the mistakes of the past. What about venomous snakes? Surprisingly, by 2020, the number of Habu bites had dropped to 60 per year. And it happened not because of the mongooses, but because of increased access to antidotes and other protective measures. Ironically, the problem that led to the appearance of mongooses has almost resolved itself. Since 1992, there has not been a single case of death of a local resident from a bite of a habu. This is a real breakthrough in medicine and emergency response. Now the residents of Amami-Oshima can feel safer, although it is necessary to remain vigilant. The story of Amami-Oshima is far from an isolated incident. Mongooses terrorize ecosystems all over the world. Let's recall Hawaii, where 72 mongooses were imported in the 1880s to control rats on sugar plantations. The result? An environmental disaster, the threat of extinction of many native bird species, and a complete failure in the fight against rats. The situation in Hawaii was even worse than in Japan. Mongooses have not only failed to control the rats, but have also caused the extinction of at least 8 endangered bird species. Entire species, unique creations of nature, were lost forever because of a single rash decision. Or take Jamaica, where after the importation of mongooses in 1872, a real epidemic of ticks broke out. And why? Because mongooses have exterminated birds and reptiles that once controlled the insect population. Imagine the domino effect in nature when one wrong step leads to a cascade of unpredictable consequences. It took a long time for the British colonists in Jamaica to figure out what was going on. They complained about the invasion of ticks, but the authorities insisted that the balance in nature would be restored by itself. Unfortunately, nature has not been so forgiving of human mistakes. Fortunately, the history of mongooses has not always been a history of destruction. For example, the ancient Egyptians kept mongooses as pets. A unique image of a man leading a mongoose on a leash has been found on a grave dated 4,000 years ago. They may have used these animals to hunt birds or control rodents. Who knows? Maybe humans and mongooses lived together more harmoniously back then. Interestingly, mongooses have never been fully domesticated in the sense in which we understand the word today. They were not bred in a controlled manner, like dogs or cats. However, in some cultures, they were kept as pets, mainly for pest control. Let's return to the present. The Amami-Oshima experience was not in vain for Japan. These lessons are now being applied in Okinawa, where mongooses are also a problem. But here the situation is even more complicated. Okinawa is closer to the mongoose's natural habitat, which makes them an even greater threat to local wildlife. Mongooses were introduced to Okinawa back in 1910, about 70 years before they arrived on Amami-Oshima. Only 17 animals were released, but it was enough to cause an environmental disaster. The higher temperatures and proximity to the mongoose's natural habitat have made the island an ideal breeding ground. Special fences have been built in Okinawa to contain mongooses. These fences are real masterpieces of technology. They are not very tall, but they have an L-shaped base that prevents mongooses from digging tunnels under them. Imagine this. The tiny predators stopped because of a simple bend in the metal. Interestingly, Okinawan mongooses not only threaten local wildlife, but also 3 endemic bird species. These birds have survived typhoons and other natural disasters for thousands of years, but were defenseless against small invaders from the mainland. The fight against mongooses in Okinawa continues today. Thanks to the fences installed, their population is gradually decreasing, but a complete victory is still far away. The authorities realized that they could not allow the mongooses from Okinawa to invade Amami-Oshima again. Otherwise, they would have to start all over again. Now imagine a completely different story with mongooses. In Sri Lanka, it was once decided to train these animals to detect prohibited substances. Yes, you heard right, the mongoose police. The project even received a grant of $50,000 from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the country. The idea seemed revolutionary. It was planned to use mongooses to check cargo containers. The animals were released into a container filled with auto parts, and when they noticed something suspicious, they came out with their tails fluffed out. Experiments have shown that mongooses can indeed be trained in this type of work, and the first results were very promising. Even the Sri Lanka National Zoo was involved, providing its own facilities for experiments. A special trainer was hired and a training program was developed. Mongooses have turned into little furry detectives jumping between crates in search of contraband. It seemed that Sri Lanka was on the verge of a breakthrough in customs control. The Mungo police could become a real sensation and change the rules against trafficking in illegal substances. But, as is often the case with innovative projects, reality intervened. A change in the country's leadership, political upheaval, and the ambitious project was forgotten. Mongooses have never become part of Sri Lanka's law enforcement system. Today, the Mungo police story seems like a funny anecdote from the past. But who knows? If the project had continued, we could have seen these nimble little animals at customs offices around the world. But history took a different path, and we were left with only the memory of an unusual idea and the untapped potential of our little furry friends.